and you're going to think I'm crazy, but please follow along for the journey because my definition of burnout is a little bit different.
When adversity came, I could have fell apart, but I chose instead to follow my heart. When adversity comes, I will never run, I will adjust, adapt, and overcome. Vision.
Woo! Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to another episode. I am your host, Tarik Williams. This is your one-stop shop for everything empowerment. Not only I am Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope. So let's get into it. And this episode is interesting. Well, all the episodes are interesting, right? But in this episode, we're going to dive deep into a topic that, I have a lot of thoughts on this, so I might as well just get right into it, right? Burnout. I'm your host, Tarik Williams. We're talking burnout today, and we're going to answer all the questions about burnout. So, let's go through the list, right? Is burnout real? Does burnout actually exist? How to deal with burnout? What is the actual true definition of what burnout actually is? So let's start there. We're going to answer all the questions. The definition of burnout, according to Alexa. See how considerate I am? I was talking loudly and then I was like, Alexa, because I don't want to turn on your Alexa device. Well, maybe I just did. Who knows? But anyways, the definition, according to Alexa, she says that it's that moment where you're feeling all that stress and you're feeling drained from your career or your job, etc. And when you might think of burnout, you might think of it around the same lines, like feeling absolutely drained and not knowing exactly how to handle a lot of different situations in your life and tired, exhaustion, stress when you're thinking about these particular situations. And so you're waking up in the morning and you're like, oh, I have to do that again or go to that job again or what have you. But the thing about burnout is, you're having all these different feelings about what that stress level is. So is burnout actually real? The answer is yes, because your feelings are real, your emotions are real, what you're feeling mentally and physically, etc. Those things are real. And no one can tell us, no one can tell you what you're feeling or not feeling. They're your feelings. They're your feelings. You're the only one in your shoes. You know you better than you. Now, sometimes we need a friend or someone out there to, talk to us about what's going on and we got to vent, etc. But ultimately, they're your feelings. They're real. A burnout is real. It's a real feeling. And so part of the incomplete, though, of this definition is the fact that when it comes to burnout, it seems to always be quote unquote marketed as something that's specific to job or career. Right? That's the popular burnout. Okay. I'm here to tell you that that's incomplete. You've been here before. And so the fact of the matter is, burnout is not exclusive to your job or to your career. You could have burnout from different friendships. You could have burnout from different relationships. You could have burnout from maybe volunteering or different things along those lines. You can feel burnout in other situations, not just your job or your career. And so we have to figure out how to handle some of these different situations because we defined what we were told, what Alexa told us what burnout was, and dictionary.com, etc., has told us what burnout is. And so once again, it's incomplete to only think of it as a job or career thing. Burnout can exist in a lot of different magnitudes. And so if I'm thinking about burnout being real and we know that it's a real thing, I am going to tell you a little bit about my definition of burnout. And we're going to think about this in a little bit of a different way. Now, I'm going to say this after I've just said burnout is real. I have something interesting, and you're going to think I'm crazy, but please follow along for the journey. Follow along. If this is something that you need to hear, hit that like button. Give me the 5-star rating on all podcast platforms because we're about to get real right now. So you're gonna think I'm a little bit crazy, but hear me. Hear me on this, because my definition of burnout is a little bit different. Now, when it comes to burnout, we can't ignore it. Okay, you can't ignore your burnout. You can't avoid your burnout. Pretend that it doesn't exist. That's not going to help you. Okay, because your burnout is a real thing. Now, when it comes to my definition, burnout is actually a good thing. Yes, you heard me correct. Burnout is a good thing. Let me explain to you why. And let me give you my definition of what burnout is. Because once you stop ignoring your burnout, avoiding your burnout, you need to address it, right? Ultimately, what I'm saying is recognize your burnout. Recognize it. Okay? Because once you recognize your burnout, now we can talk about what your burnout actually is. And do you know what your burnout actually is? What burnout actually is? It's recognizing that you deserve more. And what you recognize that you deserve more, you recognize that your goals are out there, you recognize that your dreams are out there, and you recognize that what you got going on right now, that ain't it. All right? What you got going on ain't it. So we need to figure out, and we're about to get into that a little bit here, but recognizing your burnout is actually a good thing. I'm repeating this for y'all, okay? Because y'all think I'm losing my mind, but you're starting to follow along. You're starting to be like, huh, maybe he's right. Because you recognize your burnout, you recognize what you're going through right now, ain't it? Which means you recognize and you know that you deserve more. So let's talk about it. So let's talk about the 3 tips that I got for you to overcome your burnout. Number 1, communication. Let's talk about communication with your burnout. We recognize that it exists to us. Let's talk about communication. So, you know, the communication piece can be a little bit interesting. If there are other parties, other individuals involved, a part of your burnout, if it is your job or your career or a relationship or what have you gotta have a conversation. Okay? You gotta have the conversation with your friend and be like, hey, our conversations are draining me. You got to be real. That sounds a little harsh. Maybe you figure out how to say it to them. You know your friend. I don't know your friends. They're your friends. But you got to know how to have that conversation. If it's your friend, if it's a relationship, if it's job, employer, etc., you got to seek out that conversation so you can address it, so you can start taking steps, which we're going to get to in a little bit. But you have to have communication with your burnout. Now, here is the interesting part of this. It could be with another individual, it could be with your employer, it could be with those different individuals. But once again, recognizing your burnout is a part of this. And so the communication piece might be a conversation you need to have with yourself. That's probably where you're going to have to start. Once you recognize that you have the conversation with yourself, you have that communication with yourself. And listen, hold on. Okay. Let's be real here for a second. People are going to think you're wild and out of control and that you're a little bit nuts because you're talking to yourself. No, absolutely not. You gotta you gotta learn more about you every single day, right? That's that communication piece with yourself. And so communicate with yourself, communicate with the other people that may be a part of the burnout. Start having that open dialogue. Now, if you can't have that open dialogue in those different situations, well, that might lead us to my second tip. Now, we got communication, but our second tip for how to overcome your burnout is setting boundaries. You have to set boundaries, okay? If there's something that's not serving you in a particular situation, if there's something that's specifically draining you within your situation, or if it's a particular event that happens consistently when you're hanging out with this particular person, right? You got to set that healthy boundary, okay? And that's why the communication piece before is so important, because once you have that open dialogue, if it's your real friend that you're struggling with the burnout in, they're going to understand and try to give you what it is you need to start lessening that burnout so you can overcome that. Okay. So start thinking about what it looks like to set healthy boundaries in your life so that you can overcome this burnout. Now, I'm not telling you. Now, I want to be clear about this. I'm not telling you all this to make it sound like it's going to be easy, right? Because this is a journey. Even though I have these three tips that I know work, it's still going to be a little bit of a journey, right? Because you've ignored your burnout for a while. Now you're starting to recognize it. And I'm telling you, have these hard conversations, and you got to set these hard but healthy boundaries to get through this. Because once again, we recognize that where you're at now ain't it. So think about what these healthy boundaries look like. If it's at your job or with an employer, have that conversation, set that healthy boundary, and be like, hey, you know, I love working here, but I can do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. But when it comes to H, I, and J, I gotta set that boundary. I gotta set that boundary. Okay. With those relationships, if those are people that you're willing to work through that relationship with and they're willing to work with you as well, set those healthy boundaries to work together to uplift each other. Okay. Now, finally, for the third tip, you have to do the things that give you joy. Tarik, gosh, Tarik, I don't have the time, Tarik, to do those things anymore. I don't have the energy to do those things anymore. Well, that's the problem, right? Because you're working so hard at whatever is giving you burnout that you no longer have time to do the things that give you joy. That's part of the problem, right? So make the time, find the energy. If it's a money thing for whatever it is you want to do, find healthy ways to start saving money. That gets back to the boundary piece, right? You have to make time, find the energy, find the money, make the money, save the money, whatever it is, okay? To do the things that give you joy. Why? Why? Because you deserve it. You deserve it. It's not like, oh, like obviously, like people can say, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that, you need to do this, you need to do that, you want to do this, you want to do that, whatever it is. Ultimately, I'm not using that language because you deserve it. Deserve is the key word there. You deserve it to yourself. All right. You know, this life that we live, all right, we we need to embrace it. We need to cherish it. So, what do we look like spending years on end, weeks on end, months on end, days on end, years, etc., etc., staying in burnout. You're hearing me and you know this doesn't make sense, right? So let's make it make sense. Find the things that give you joy, make time for those things. So let's recap the 3 tips and go back to our definition. Communication, setting healthy boundaries, and doing the things that give you joy. Burnout, as defined earlier, the stress, the things that make us tired, the exhaustion, the draining, okay? But burnout, we are Vision of Hope, our Speak Your Vision podcast definition. Burnout is actually a good thing. Recognize your burnout, recognize that it's good, because you recognize that where you're at now ain't it. Because your goals, your dreams are all waiting for you. You deserve it to yourself. You deserve it to those around you, but ultimately you deserve it to yourself. Okay? Send this podcast out there to someone who needs to hear this right now, because burnout is absolutely real. But no one, I've never heard anyone else say that burnout's actually a good thing. But we recognize that it's good because we recognize that our opportunities for ourselves exist. They're out there. Where we're at now is not it. You deserve more. We all deserve more. And your goals, your dreams, all that are out there waiting for you. So this is We Are Vision of Hope. This is the Speak Your Vision podcast. Overcome your burnout and go get those dreams. Vision.
When adversity came, I could have fell apart, but I chose instead to follow my heart. When adversity comes, I will never run. I will adjust, adapt, and overcome. Vision.